The small town of Millfield, nestled in the rolling hills of New England, had always prided itself on being the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors. A tight-knit community of barely 5,000 residents, it was the sort of town where doors remained unlocked at night and children played freely in the streets until dusk called them home. In such a place, the Richardson family's sudden disappearance in the autumn of 1989 wasn't just unusual. It was absolutely unthinkable. The Richardsons had been the picture of small-town American life. Robert, a respected high school science teacher with a passion for astronomy, had moved to Millfield with his wife Diane, a part-time nurse at the local clinic, and their two children, 16-year-old Emma and 11-year-old Michael, nearly 7 years before their disappearance. They had quickly integrated into the community, becoming fixtures at town events and church gatherings. They were as normal as could be, Sheriff Thomas Holbrook would later tell reporters, his weathered face betraying the confusion that still lingered years after the investigation had officially gone cold. Robert was coaching the science club at the high school. Diane volunteered at the hospital. The kids were good students. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that would have indicated they were planning to leave. The first sign that something was amiss came on Monday, October 16, 1989, when neither Robert nor the children showed up at school. A concerned colleague called the Richardson home, but received no answer. By afternoon, when Diane failed to arrive for her shift at the clinic, the alarm was raised. Sheriff Holbrook dispatched Deputy Claire Reynolds to perform a welfare check at the Richardson residence, a charming two-story colonial at the end of Maple Drive. What Deputy Reynolds found, or rather didn't find, would become the first chapter in what locals would later call the Millfield Mystery. The Richardson family car, a blue 1985 Chevrolet station wagon, was parked in the driveway. Inside the house, nothing appeared disturbed. Half-empty coffee mugs sat on the kitchen counter. School books were spread across the dining room table. The television TV guide was open to Sunday night's programming. Emma's hairbrush still had strands of her auburn hair. Michael's baseball glove lay on his bedroom floor. But the Richardsons themselves had vanished without a trace. It was like they had been plucked right out of their lives, Deputy Reynolds would later recall, her voice still tinged with disbelief even decades later. Dinner dishes were in the sink, the newspaper was on the porch, Robert's reading glasses were on his nightstand, their wallets, keys, and Diane's purse were all accounted for. Even their toothbrushes were still in the bathroom. People don't just disappear without taking their toothbrushes. The investigation that followed was unprecedented in Millfield's quiet history. Sheriff Holbrook called in reinforcements from the state police. Search parties combed the surrounding forests. Divers checked the lake, where the family often picnicked in summer. Dogs tracked scents that led nowhere. Helicopters scanned the area from above. Nothing. As days turned to weeks, theories multiplied like dandelions after a spring rain. Some believed the Richardsons had entered the witness protection program, though no one could suggest what crimes they might have witnessed. Others whispered about cultish activities, secret lives, or family troubles hidden beneath their picture-perfect veneer. The more pragmatic feared a tragic accident in a remote location, while the town's more imaginative residents spun tales of alien abductions or government conspiracies. "We're looking at this from every possible angle," Sheriff Holbrook assured the increasingly anxious town during a community meeting at the high school gymnasium. "We've checked bank records, phone calls, interviewed friends, family and colleagues. There's no evidence of foul play, but also no evidence they planned to leave. It's as if they simply vanished." As months passed with no developments, the investigation gradually lost momentum. The Richardsons' extended family, an elderly mother in Florida and a brother in Seattle, continued to press for answers, but leads had dried up. The case file remained open, but was increasingly gathering dust on a shelf in the sheriff's office. Life in Millfield reluctantly moved forward. The Richardson house stood empty, a silent monument to the mystery that had shaken the community's sense of security. Initially, curious teenagers would dare each other to peek through the windows, hoping to spot some overlooked clue. But as years passed, the house became just another abandoned property, its paint peeling and garden overgrown, a place that parents warned their children to avoid, not because of ghosts, but because of rotting floorboards and rusting nails. By 2004, 15 years after the disappearance, the Richardson case had faded from active memory into local legend, a story told to newcomers over beers at O'Malley's pub, or whispered during sleepovers when parents were out of earshot. The mystery had become part of Millfield's fabric, like the old covered bridge on County Road, or the purportedly haunted Victorian mansion on Hill Street. That spring, the long-vacant Richardson house was finally purchased by a developer who specialized in renovating and flipping properties in the increasingly desirable New England region. Marcus Whitaker, an ambitious 30-something from Boston with an eye for potential, saw past the deterioration to the solid bones of the colonial home. "The location is perfect," he told his business partner during their initial walkthrough, carefully stepping over a fallen ceiling beam. "Once we clear out this mess, update the kitchen and bathrooms, and restore the original hardwood floors, this place will sell in a heartbeat. These small towns are becoming gold mines for city folks looking for weekend retreats." Whitaker hired a local construction crew led by foreman Jack Thornton, a lifelong Millfield resident who remembered the Richardson family and their puzzling disappearance. The renovation began in earnest that May, with plans to have the house market-ready by autumn. The crew's first tasks involved clearing out the debris accumulated over 15 years of neglect: broken furniture, water-damaged books, rodent nests, and the detritus of a once active family life that had been abandoned to time and the elements. They tore out moldy carpets, removed damaged drywall, and began to strip the house back to its structural elements before rebuilding. It was during the third week of renovation that everything changed. Luis Mendoza, a recent addition to Thornton's crew, was using a sledgehammer to take down a non-load-bearing wall between what had once been Robert Richardson's home office and a small storage area. The wall wasn't on the original house plans that Whitaker had obtained from the town records, suggesting it had been added by the Richardsons after they purchased the home. "I remember thinking it was odd," Thornton would later explain. "The workmanship was different, more amateur than the rest of the house, and it didn't make sense from a design perspective. It created this awkward, closed-off space that wasn't really usable." When Mendoza's sledgehammer broke through the drywall, he expected to find the usual studs, insulation, and perhaps some electrical wiring or plumbing. Instead, his tool revealed a small cavity that had been sealed off completely from both rooms. "Hey, Jack," he called out, stepping back from the dust and debris. "You might want to take a look at this." Thornton crossed the room, puzzled by his worker's tone. Peering through the ragged hole in the drywall, he saw something that made his blood run cold, a space about 3 feet wide and 6 feet deep that had been completely enclosed within the house's structure, invisible from either side. And inside that space was a small metal lockbox. "I knew right then that we'd found something important," Thornton would later tell investigators. "That box didn't get there by accident." With cautious hands, Thornton extracted the lockbox from its hiding place. It was surprisingly heavy, roughly the size of a shoebox, its once shiny surface now dulled with a patina of age. A simple padlock secured the lid, but years of dampness had caused the metal to corrode. With a pair of bolt cutters from his truck, Thornton carefully snipped through the rusted lock. The crew gathered around as their foreman slowly lifted the lid, unsure of what they might find. Inside, protected by a sealed plastic bag, was a stack of notebooks, a small voice recorder, several rolls of undeveloped film, and a typed letter in an envelope addressed simply, "For whoever finds this." Thornton's hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the letter and began to read aloud to his hushed crew. The typed words, slightly faded but still clearly legible, began with a sentence that would forever change Millfield's understanding of what had happened that autumn night in 1989. If you are reading this, then I, Robert Richardson, and likely my entire family, are dead. Bees. Within hours, the Richardson house was once again surrounded by police tape, the quiet neighborhood buzzing with activity as sheriff department vehicles lined the street. The current sheriff, Matthew Cooper, who had been a rookie deputy when the Richardsons disappeared, stood in the gutted living room, staring at the contents of the lockbox, now carefully arranged on a plastic tarp. "I need the state police forensics team here immediately," he spoke into his radio. "And get me the case files from 89. All of them." As news spread through Millfield with the speed that only small-town gossip networks can achieve, residents gathered at the police barrier, their conversations a mix of shock, morbid curiosity, and long-dormant grief freshly awakened. Among them stood Mary Sullivan, who had been Emma Richardson's best friend in high school and who had never fully accepted that her friend had simply run away, as some had theorized. "I told everyone," she whispered to her husband, tears streaming down her face. "I told them Emma would never have left without saying goodbye. Something happened to them, something terrible." Inside the house, Sheriff Cooper began the painstaking process of documenting each item from the lockbox. The voice recorder, an old cassette model, still had a tape inside. The film rolls were carefully placed in evidence bags to be developed under controlled conditions. But it was the notebooks, 5 in total, filled with Robert Richardson's meticulous handwriting, that immediately commanded attention. The first notebook began with an entry dated approximately 6 months before the family's disappearance. April 3rd, 1989. "I've decided to start documenting everything. Diane thinks I'm being paranoid, but after what happened at the school today, I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. Principal Garner introduced me to a new curriculum advisor who asked very specific questions about my astronomy unit. His knowledge of the subject seemed superficial at best, but his interest in my telescope equipment and observation logs was unsettling. When I mentioned the strange lights we've been seeing over the North Woods, his entire demeanor changed. Deep. As Sheriff Cooper continued reading, the journals revealed a disturbing narrative that had never been part of the official investigation. According to Robert's increasingly anxious entries, the Richardson family had observed unusual aerial phenomena during their regular stargazing sessions, strange lights that moved in patterns defying conventional aircraft capabilities. Robert, with his scientific background, had begun documenting these sightings meticulously, even capturing some on film. But what had started as scientific curiosity had apparently evolved into something far more dangerous. Robert described being followed by unmarked vehicles, phone calls where no one spoke before hanging up, a break-in where nothing was taken, but his observation logs were clearly disturbed. May 18th, 1989. Someone was in my office at school today. Nothing missing, but my desk had been searched. The file containing my spectrographic analyses was slightly out of place. I'm not mentioning any of this to Emma or Michael, but Diane agrees we need to be careful. I've moved all my research to the Home Office and installed a better lock on the door. The journal entries became increasingly paranoid, or perhaps increasingly aware, as summer turned to fall. Robert described men in suits watching their house, strange electronic interference with their home appliances, and a growing sense that whatever he had witnessed and documented was putting his family in danger. September 28th, 1989. Diane saw them again today, parked across from the hospital during her entire shift. When she left work, they followed her to the grocery store. She's frightened now, and I don't know how to protect them. We've discussed going to Sheriff Holbrook, but without proof, what would we say? That we saw lights in the sky and now men in suits are following us? He'd think we were crazy. Maybe we are. But the fear I saw in that man's eyes when I mentioned my photographs tells me otherwise. They're real. They know we've seen something we shouldn't have, and they're getting closer. The final journal entry was dated October 15th, 1989. the day before the family was reported missing. They came to the house today, two men, claiming to be from the Department of Energy, asking about my amateur research. They didn't threaten us explicitly, but the message was clear when they mentioned how tragic it would be if anything happened to Emma or Michael. We can't go to the police. We can't trust anyone. Diane and I have made a decision. We're leaving tonight, taking only what we can carry. I've hidden copies of all my evidence and these journals in the one place they wouldn't think to look, inside our own walls. If anything happens to us, at least the truth won't disappear too. To whoever finds this, we didn't abandon our lives willingly. We were running for them. Sheriff Cooper closed the final journal, his mind racing with implications. The official investigation had never considered government involvement or conspiracy. Such theories had been dismissed as the paranoid ramblings of town eccentrics. But Robert Richardson's detailed accounts, written in real time as events unfolded, painted a disturbing picture that couldn't be easily dismissed. The voice recorder contained only one brief message, dated the same night as the final journal entry. Robert's voice, tense but determined, spoke through the slight hiss of the aged tape. "This is Robert Richardson. It's approximately 11:30 p.m. on October 15th. We're leaving now through the back door. If we make it to my brother in Seattle, we'll contact the press with everything we know. If not, then this recorder and the materials I've hidden may be all that's left of us." Diane wants me to add that we love our home and would never have left by choice. To whoever finds this, please don't stop looking for the truth. As forensic technicians carefully processed the scene, another discovery was made behind a different section of wall, a sealed PVC pipe containing rolls of film and several pages of coordinates, dates, and technical measurements. When developed days later, the photographs would show strange illuminated objects in the night sky, performing maneuvers that defied conventional aviation capabilities, along with telephoto images of what appeared to be unmarked black vehicles and men in dark suits watching the Richardson house from a distance. The discovery rocked Millfield to its core and quickly attracted national attention. News vans lined Maple Drive. Conspiracy theorists descended on the town. Former government officials offered conflicting explanations. The FBI arrived, ostensibly to assist with the investigation, but many locals noted how quickly they moved to take possession of the original materials, leaving only copies with the sheriff's department. This is now an active missing persons case with potential federal implications, the lead FBI agent announced at an impromptu press conference on the town green. "We're pursuing all leads and will determine what happened to the Richardson family." But many in Millfield remained skeptical. The same government that Robert Richardson had feared seemed to be controlling the investigation into his family's disappearance. A grassroots movement formed among the townspeople, led by Mary Sullivan and several of Robert's former colleagues. They created a website documenting the Richardson case, uploaded copies of the journals that had been secretly scanned before the FBI's arrival, and pressed for an independent investigation. 6 months after the renovation crew's discovery, an anonymous source within the state police leaked information that would further inflame public interest. The blue Chevrolet station wagon that had been parked in the Richardson driveway after their disappearance was not, in fact, their car. Though visually identical, the vehicle identification number didn't match the Richardsons' registration records. Someone had placed a nearly identical vehicle at their home, perhaps to delay the realization that the family had fled. For the residents of Millfield, the Richardson mystery transformed from a sad, puzzling disappearance into something far more sinister. The idea that government agents might have pursued and possibly harmed an ordinary family for something they had witnessed challenged their fundamental trust in authority and awakened a protective fury for their former neighbors. The renovation of the Richardson house was never completed. Marcus Whitaker, uncomfortable with the attention and the implications of what had been found, sold the property to a non-profit organization established by Mary Sullivan and other Millfield residents. They converted it into a small museum and research center dedicated to the Richardson case and similar incidents across the country. Visitors to Millfield today will find a town forever changed by what was discovered inside that wall. The Richardson House Museum stands as a testament to a family that didn't simply vanish, but was potentially silenced. The wall where the lockbox was found has been preserved behind plexiglass, a visual reminder of secrets hidden in plain sight. The ultimate fate of the Richardson family remains officially unresolved. No bodies were ever found, no confirmed sightings ever reported. Robert's brother in Seattle maintained until his death that they never arrived, never called, never made contact of any kind. But in Millfield, on clear nights when stars blanket the New England sky, residents sometimes gather on the hill where the Richardsons once held their family stargazing sessions. They bring telescopes and cameras, scanning the heavens, not just for celestial beauty, but for glimpses of the phenomena that Robert Richardson documented. And they watch for strange vehicles and men in suits, their eyes now open to possibilities that 15 years hidden within a wall have forced them to consider. The truth about what happened to the Richardsons may never be fully known. But their story, preserved through one man's foresight and determination to leave a record, ensures that they will never truly vanish from memory. In a small town where everyone knew their neighbors, the discovery behind that wall transformed a local mystery into a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying disappearances aren't those without explanation, but those whose explanations challenge everything we believe about the world around us. As Sheriff Cooper, now a dedicated advocate for transparency in the Richardson investigation, often tells visitors to Millfield, it's not about believing in conspiracy theories or extraterrestrial life. It's about believing that a good man would not abandon his home, his career, and his community without desperate cause. Robert Richardson left us his truth. The least we can do is listen. And in Millfield, they continue to listen to the echoes of a family that vanished in 1989 and to the walls that finally spoke 15 years later.